everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Adoptions from the Heart TV. I'm your host, Amanda Aliberti. Today we're going to be sitting down with Danielle Goodman, who's a social worker and supervisor at the agency. She actually just hit her 15th year anniversary, and we're going to talk with her about what life is like today versus when she first started. Well, welcome, Danielle.
Thanks for having me.
Can you first start by sharing with our audience what your role is today at Adoptions from the Heart?
Sure. So my title actually is Regional and District Supervisor. I actually am the district supervisor for our Delaware office, and I regionally supervise our Pittsburgh office.
And you just hit your 15th year anniversary.
I'm actually coming up on my 16th year anniversary in November.
So you started in what year?
2006.
2006.
Yeah.
Can you remember when you first joined the agency, like what life was like? Like what was the environment like? What was the agency about?
We were not nearly as busy or as had as many offices or as much staff, I feel like, when I first started, at least domestically. So when I first started, we definitely had international programs that we were still running at that point. Our Delaware office did have a handful of international clients, but we still had quite a bit of birth parents and not so many adoptive parents domestically. So on a positive note, thankfully, after all of these years, it has started to change a little bit. We have built up even more birth parents and expected parents that we work with here in this office, as well as we've done way more working with adoptive parents here.
Can you talk a little bit about transracial adoption? I know you speak a lot about what life was like when you first started in terms of the
Sure.
diversity or lack of diversity that we had and kind of how things have transformed up until today.
So it was always very interesting to me. When I started, most of the clientele that I worked with actually were women delivering African-American or biracial African-American Caucasian children. Unfortunately, what I saw when I first started was, I remember very clearly, we had one family that was open to a full African-American child and one family that was open to a biracial child. And I was blown away. I just couldn't imagine, like, we're in the 2000s, it's 2006, 2007. I couldn't understand why we didn't have very much diversity, because we did not in our books. And we didn't have families that were open to being placed with any child of any race. But you fast forward now, we have way more full African American couples, interracial couples that come in, which is such a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about the services we have today and how you feel like we've improved as an agency and what we provide to our clients.
Oh, Amanda, I think a lot of that has to do with you. I remember, one of the goals for all the offices that we had was to try to have more support services. So to try to have like adoptive parent support groups and try to have birth parent support groups. And I feel like you were probably only here maybe a year, give or take. And we had one that was scheduled. And literally it was my one birth mom and her mom that showed up, and that was it. There was nobody else that showed up, and we tried so hard. And I don't know what switched, because I think it did definitely have something to do with the clientele that you were working with, your birth parents that you had seen, and just timing worked out really well of us being able to start a really great birth parent support group that met here, and it just expanded so much, and it has been such a wonderful development and such a great resource for all of these women and men too, because we actually have had some men come on as well, and it's a beautiful thing. Unfortunately, with the pandemic, we haven't been doing things in person, obviously, as much, but that has only made things better in a way, because it has allowed for women from even further away to come. I always tell families, like, I'm not in your shoes. Like, I've never walked your walk as a birth parent. I can appreciate what you've done. I can understand and sympathize with how difficult this is, but I've never walked in your shoes. And so for these women and men to have other people who have actually walked in their shoes is such a tremendous thing.
Would you say too, I know we talk a lot about just in general, our agency changed in terms of we're not just a placing agency anymore, providing those wraparound services before, during, and after to expecting and birth parents as well as adoptive parents.
Right.
So I think at least for me in my 10 years of being here, that has changed, where I don't think we are just an adoption agency and we do more for our clients as a whole. And we're trying to make these improvements in the structure of our program so that we're not just that agency that places a child and then that's it.
Forget about them. Yeah.
Right.
And I always tell, clients that we work with, like, we're here forever. I may not personally be here forever, but somebody always will be. So if you need support, please reach out, because we have all of these avenues of support now.
Sure.
These expected parents can come and talk, and we can connect them with other birth parents that have worked through our agency. We can invite them to these support groups. We have transracial support groups for adopted parents. We have a waiting support group for adopted parents. We've gotten quite a few calls from parents that are, parenting their child who might be a teenager, 10-year-old, 15-year-old, and they're struggling a little bit. And so we're here for the availability of the resources that we can give out to these families.
Even the education for adoptive families has transformed, right? Do you remember when you first started, like what types of programs did we have for adoptive parents versus today?
We literally just had an educational course. Yep. So it was an educational course that just taught about open adoption and the relationship with birth parents. And now fast forward, we have a transracial course. We have an intersectionality course. We have a standard doctor that comes on that does drug and alcohol effects course that happens via webinar. So it has just dramatically changed.
Yeah, I think the philosophy has almost changed, right? We've tried to really improve, not just trying to prove to people that open adoption works. Now we've gone beyond that, right? It's like, okay, we get that, we believe in it. What do we do next? Right. My final question is, do you feel like the values of the agency have remained the same? Like, do you feel like the core reason why Maxine started this agency has remained the same?
I do. Although I think it's almost gotten stronger. I think that everyone who works here has that same belief system, and it's so important for these adoptees, because that's really what we're here for, is these adoptees to have this ability to have the knowledge base and to not have it be such a sacred, like, scary thing that we don't talk about, because years and years ago, prior to, our agency starting in 1985, everything was closed.
Yeah.
Everything was, we didn't talk about it. Adoptees might not even have known that they were adopted because their families chose not to, to keep that a secret from them. And so I think that even more so now, we live in a world that we know how beneficial openness is, and we believe in that full-heartedly. Like, every single one of us as social workers who work here, our administrative staff, marketing, everybody who works here really does believe in the same values that Maxine started out with.
Absolutely. Well, we appreciate you.
Well, thank you.
I always say I wouldn't be who I am at this agency if it wasn't for you. I think the fact that we do have old school veterans that have been here for 10, 15, 20 years really provides the foundation and helps us with bringing in new staff.
Absolutely.
But we're all passionate about what we do, and I just want to say thank you. Well, thank you so much to Danielle for taking the time to share her story. I've always said that Danielle is my teammate, my personal buddy. She's provided such service to our community. There are so many clients who come back and are just so happy that they had Danielle in her life. And I'm happy that you guys got to hear a little bit about her journey and what life was like when she first started up until today. So thanks so much, and tune in next week.